goodness, that is lovely. Oh. All right, I'm Paige. I'm an addict. Gosh, that was powerful, hey? Yeah. Like, what a miraculous demonstration. You know, and that's what Cocaine Anonymous is all about. It is a miraculous demonstration of a power beyond ourselves, active and working in human lives. And we see Robin, and I mean, we're nothing less than a miraculous demonstration. And you know, what is a miracle? A miracle is something that goes against the grain of human nature. And human nature for an addict is to continue to use. To use and 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 to use until we run out of options. And that is the natural course for an addict. But for an addict to be clean, to be sober, for the light that is on in their eyes, for that hope that pervades her spirit that we see in Robin today, that is nothing less than miraculous. And we come to Cocaine Anonymous, and I dearly hope to find a solution here in Cocaine Anonymous. But we come to not only come to believe, but we come to expect miracles in Cocaine Anonymous. And that's what we're after, nothing less than miracles. And I have a friend who talks about, I believe in miracles because I am a miracle. And I believe in miracles because I see the miraculous demonstration that is Robin and her sobriety. And deeper than that, the willingness that she has to work with others. The joy and the peace and the serenity that she has, that she wants to give to others, man, that is a miracle. And when I found what is available on offer in Cocaine Anonymous, man, I can't help but give it away. You know, when I begin to be so filled up with something that is not me. Because you know what? You guys know what it's like to be filled with the bondage of self, right? Not people from London. Although I do hear from people from Hamilton know what's up. You guys are like, oh, bondage of self. I'm just kidding. But when I'm filled up with something that is not me, man, I can't help but want to give that away. And I see that miraculous demonstration in Robin's life. And man, this is an experience I wouldn't want to miss. You know what I mean? It is a privilege for me to be able to be here. It is a privilege for me to be asked to speak. And where I kind of felt called to bounce around the big book, don't worry, it's not going to be too bouncy. Not too bouncy. But where I just felt called was on page 28 of our book. And on page 28 of our book, it talks about the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, we in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. And I don't know about you, but I'll tell you about my experience. My experience was before I picked up a drink, before I picked up a drug, before I picked up any mind-altering substance, man, I was thirsty. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I was going through life, and it was like I was living in a desert. And it seemed like everyone else was like having a spa day. You know what I mean? Y'all just seemed to know how to live life, and I was dying. A thirst in that desert. And life just felt too much. And by the way, I'm going to point out that is not diagnostic of the illness of addiction that is laid out in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. But I was driven by a thirst. I was after a thirst. And I tried a bunch of different things and nothing quenched it. And I see a little stream. It's a little stream that starts going by. And it's a little stream that's labeled drugs and alcohol. You know, drugs including alcohol. And, you know, I'm so thirsty. And I go to that stream and I bend down and I just take a sip. And I don't know if your experience is like my experience, but I take a sip, I pop a pill, I take a hoot, a crack, and I experience, you guys know what I mean? Yeah, we got some addicts in the house. What up, London? You know, I get that. I get that peace. I get that ease. I get that comfort. Man, it is everything that I was looking for my whole life. You know what I mean? My shoulders, see, I was wearing them as earrings my whole life. I had that knot in my gut from as long as I can remember. See, I don't know about you, but I came out of the womb a little restless, irritable, discontent. You know what I mean? Like, oh, put me back. This is a little much. You know what I mean? Like, oh, no, thank you. No, I don't like to be honest. I heard I was a little overwhelmed in vitro. You know what I mean? I was a little like, yikes. And so it was everything that I was looking for. And I found my solution in the bottle. I found my solution in the pipe. I found my solution in the pills. And that was the answer. And so I begin to wade in a little bit more and a little bit more. Because, man, I don't want to go back to that dreary desert of futility, life as I had been living it. But wouldn't you know, that stream, it's got a nasty undercurrent. And I couldn't see it. And little by slowly, the more I waded in, the more I felt that current. And little by slowly, that current began to take me. And what for me that current really is what we describe as the physical allergy. It is the phenomenon of craving, and I don't know what happens to you, but I'll share with you what happens to me. What happens to me is I take a drink, I take a hoot, I pop a pill, I take any mind-altering substance, and I get the effect. Oh, it's like a little switch that then goes off in the back of my head. And that switch tells me more. And the more that I drink, the more that I use, the more that I pop pills, the more I smoke crack, the more I do it, the louder that more gets. See, I don't know what happens to you, but what happens to me is I take that drink, I take that drug, and it demands a second. And that second will not relent until I've had 4. And the 4th is screaming at me until I've had 8. And the 8th will not let go until I've had 16, and so on and so forth. And you see, I don't know about you, but for me, that undercurrent begins to take me. And you know, at first, it doesn't seem so bad. At first, it's things like, you know, and to be honest, I had pretty serious consequences pretty early on, like, but for many of us, oh yeah, you know when you are like, hey, I'm fine, and everyone's like trying to plan an intervention, and it's like, what's the big deal? You know, I look back and the disaster factory that is my life. You know, But my experience was that at first it doesn't seem so bad, although for me it was real bad real quick. But little by slowly, and in my experience, little by quickly, that current begins to take me places I never wanted to go. You see, I don't know about you, but I pick up and I start to, because of that inability to control the amount that I take every single time, I start to cross lines in the sand I said I would never cross. I start to do things I said I would never do. My life becomes one that is absolutely unrecognizable to somebody like me. I don't know about you, I break hearts I never wanted to break. I betray trust that meant everything to me. I lose things in life, and I'm not just talking about my shoes, although I don't know where they went. You know. But I'm talking about I lost dreams, I lost hopes, I lost opportunities, I lost jobs, I lost relationships, I lost my family, I lost dignity, I lost self-respect, I lost self-worth, I lost everything that seemed worthwhile in life. Little by slowly, man, it's a nasty undercurrent. And you see, I don't know about you, but for me, I realized that my life, man, I don't know about you, but I would come to and I hated who I was. I hated who I had become. I couldn't look myself in the mirror, and I had not a lot of self-awareness, to be honest with you guys, but I had enough to see that alcohol and drugs were taking me to places I didn't want to go. They were causing me to cross lines I didn't want to cross. I could see that alcohol and drugs were ruining my life. And I would say with everything that was in me, that's it, I'm never going to do it again. And every time I said that, I meant it. I didn't think I meant it, because I would go and I would do it again. But every single time I came to and I said with everything that was in me, I do not want to do it again, I meant it. And I can see beyond a shadow of a doubt that I cannot stay in this river. I can see that beyond a shadow of a doubt, I cannot ever safely drink or use ever again. I can see that. And I've got to get away out of the river. And I say, that is it. I'm never going to drink again. I'm never going to use again. I am done. And what makes me an addict, and what is the baffling feature of this illness, is that I want to stay sober. I need to stay sober. I have to stay sober. Everything that I want in life is on the other side of that sobriety, is on that riverbed. Everything that I want, and I can't get there no matter how hard I try. And you see, what would happen is I would grab a hold of things. And if you've ever seen a river at flood, that is what begins to happen. You see, the longer that I'm in that river, the stronger that current gets. And that current starts picking up debris. And I start to see a branch, and that branch is self-will. And I grab a hold of that branch is self-will. And I grab a hold of it, and man, there's no substance there. It breaks apart, and I find I'm still in the river. You see, what happens is a day, a week, a month, several months down the line, I get a thought, and that thought happens in my mind. And that thought happens when I am as sober as I am today, but my illness is untreated. And it is a little thought that looks like, this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I'm just going to go out for 3 drinks. Or my problem is alcohol, but I can smoke crack like a lady. Yeah. Some of you guys know. Some of you can see the lie, and it's not about the crack. It's like, oh girl, she never done nothing like a lady. You know, call me out on that. And it looks like if you're feeling the way that I was feeling, you'd have to get loaded too. It looks like, man, I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get high? It looks like F the meeting, F these steps, F your book, F my sponsor, F it, I'm getting high, F you. It looks like a thought that is on me all day. Take a drink, get high. Take a drink, get high. Take a drink, get high. Take a drink, until it erodes what little self-will that I have, and I take a drink and I get high. And it looks like I'm out there living my life, and I get a case of the suddenlies. I got a drink in hand, I got a pipe in my mouth, and I almost don't know how it happened. And you see, I grab a hold of that branch of self-will, and it doesn't work. The self-will that I have in these other areas of my life, and it is not sufficient. And some other debris goes by. And some of the debris, it looks promising. I see a door, like in Titanic. I grab a hold of the door, and that door is pain, and that door is consequences, and that door is self-knowledge. And I try to pull myself up on the door, and it's not about room, it's about buoyancy. It's not that Rose wasn't sharing with Jack. It was a buoyancy issue. And I try to get on that door, and I find myself back in the river. By the way, I'm just going to throw out there, if you're like, oh, that movie's so romantic, absolutely do not model your sex ideal after the movie Titanic. It's not a good idea. I'm going to throw out, she was engaged to somebody else, so not really physically available to be in a relationship. She was just about to jump off a boat. So I'm just going to point out that she might not be emotionally capable of the intimacy and vulnerability that is the stability that a relationship requires. And then they have a torrid love affair where he sacrifices himself for her. I'm just saying, we can aim a lot higher. You know what I mean? We don't have to do that one. And so what happens is I grab a hold of these logs. I grab a hold of these things, man. I grab a hold of just going to meetings. I grab a hold of doing some of the work. I grab a hold of it, and it's like this log that's going, and I can't get myself up on it. And the longer that I'm in that river, the stronger those rapids get. And I can see that I'm barreling towards the edge of the cliff. I mean, it's like Niagara Falls is coming up ahead. I am in trouble and I see it. And I begin to have what I like to call a step one experience. And a step one experience is not, I can't ever safely drink or use again. A step one experience is that I can never, ever safely drink or use again, and I will. I will. That is a step one experience. When I can see the reality of my predicament. I'm in the river and my feet don't touch the ground. I am drowned and I can barely keep my head above the water. Man, there is no way for me to get out. And what do I see? On the edge of the river, what do I see? I see a flimsy reed. A flimsy reed. And that looks like a recovered addict who says, listen, Paige, the solution we have in Cocaine Anonymous is nothing less than a spiritual awakening that happens as the result of these 12 steps. And man, it feels like a flimsy reed. You're telling me this God nonsense is what's going to keep me sober? I didn't come here to get spiritual. I didn't come here for that. But when I see the reality of my predicament, I see this current has carried me. I see that I don't got another way out. And I might fight that angle. But I grab a hold of all this other debris. You know, anyone ever grab a hold of the log of a romantic relationship? Oh, we drowning, you know. You guys know. Oh, yeah, that's why we need a sex ideal. Because it's like, oh, that one. Not a good one. And I grab a hold. And nothing works. And I see that there's no option for somebody like me. And what I do is I begin to believe that maybe, just maybe, the recovered members of Cocaine Anonymous, people like Robin, have better things to do than lie about their experience. Maybe, just maybe, the light that is on in Robin's eyes, the hope that is in her spirit, the joy and the peace and the serenity and the love that pervades her, maybe, just maybe, I'm not so special that the miracle that has happened in her life could not happen to me. And I don't have to believe in it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to be excited about it. But when I see that there is no other way for somebody like me, I begin to grab a hold of that flimsy reed. And you see, what happens is I see the reality of my predicament. I see that there's no way out for somebody like me. And I make that decision to grab a hold of that reed with the willingness and desperation of a drowning man. I grab a hold of these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. And I make that third step decision, and I reach in step 4. I begin to put my hand around it in step 5. As I begin to take that quiet hour, I do my 6 and 7. My hand begins to grab a hold of that reed. And wouldn't you know, when I go out from there and I make my amends, I go and I set right the wrongs that I've done in my hand, that reed turns into the loving and powerful hand of God in my hands. Nothing happens if I don't grab for it. But if I grab a hold of it and I tighten around that reed by taking the actions of the 12 steps, whether I like it or not, whether I want to or not, with everything that is in me, it turns into God's hands. And I get pulled and lifted out of the river to safety. And I'm on the riverbed. And I get to live there. I get to live in these green pastures. I get to live in this place of peace and serenity. But I don't live there just so I get to live there. And this is some bad news if you're new, I don't get sober because I want to get sober. I don't get sober for me. I get sober because on page 163, there's this paragraph. It says, our friend proceeded to tell him with such good effect that the doctor agreed to attest among his patients and certain other alcoholics from a clinic which he attends. Arrangements were also made with the chief psychiatrist of a large public hospital to select still others from that stream of misery which flows through that institution. I don't get sober, so I get to get sober. I get sober, so I get to have my hand out for those that are drowning and do not know that there is a way out. Man, and I promise you, that gives our lives meaning and purpose beyond anything that I could ever imagine. I get well to help others. And that is when this thing comes alive. When I'm sitting down with another alcoholic, with another addict, and we're taking this course of action. And I get to watch the miracle that happened to me, the miracle that happened to Robin, and actually the miracle that happened to me, the miracle that happened to Kate, the miracle that happened to Robin, and the miracle that is happening with the women that Robin are working with. I get to be a part of that miracle. I get to be an agent for God. I get to. Man, that is powerful. See, I don't know about you. When I got here, I thought I was the biggest piece of garbage. I thought I was useless. I thought I had nothing to offer another human being. And now I get to have my hand out for those who have suffered the way that I have suffered, for those who have felt the way that I have felt, for those who have gone through what I have gone through, for those who have experienced the pain and the suffering and the degradation of active addiction. And I get to be a small part of the miracle of others. And I'll end on these two things. I really like this idea of taking sayings that, and you probably actually don't hear them a lot, because the Southern Ontario region of Cocaine Anonymous, you guys are fire. You've got some incredible, phenomenal recovery. But there are sometimes we hear sayings that do not align with what is our actual lived experience, that do not align with the directions in this book. Something like keep the plug in the jug. Anyone here ever tried to keep the plug in the jug? That didn't work. Oh, if I just don't pick up, I won't get high. Oh, that's that little chair that I'm trying to grab a hold on and I'm drowning, It doesn't work. But also, spirituality does not work like that. If I try to get this thing and I try to keep it to myself, if I try to keep the plug in the jug of what I have been so freely given, man, I lose it. It stagnates. Even though I came from some not clean water, that river was at flood. You know what I mean? It gets stagnant. Now, often we got to work with, not often, my very life as a recovered member, my very life as an ex-problem addict, as an ex-problem drinker, depends upon my constant thought of others and how I might help meet their needs. I've got to work with others. Now, not everyone is interested. Not everyone is open, and that is okay. But sometimes I hear that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But the problem with that saying is that horses know when there's clean water. You know what I mean? If you're in a survival situation, you got an animal. The animal knows whether that is stagnant water. And you see, my responsibility, if somebody is not drinking the water, now keep in mind, not everyone's open, not everyone's willing. But I got to make sure, am I offering clean water? Am I offering the message of depth and weight that is available here in Cocaine Anonymous? Am I offering that? That I have used the way that you have used. I have felt the way that you have felt. I have gone through what you've gone through. I've had many of the experiences that you've had. Man, I know what it's like to use and to burn my life to the ground. And I know what it's like to do that and go back to it again and again and again. And I know what it's like to put down the pipe. I know what it's like to put down the bottle and not be able to sit in my own skin. And if you know what that's like, if you don't want to feel that way, we've got an answer. We've got a solution. We got a way out. Let us show you how. That is the message of depth and weight. And that is a message that Robin has. And Robin could use a sponsee. So with that, another sponsee, because she's working with others. With that, that's my time. Thank you for the opportunity to share. Thank you.